Happy Tuesday! Alright, we are gonna get right into it. So Jack and Annie are going on 4 missions to basically prove that they can use magic. Merlin doesn't really trust mortals being people who are non-magical and who can die, with magic. And so if Jack and Annie want to learn how to use magic, they have to kind of prove themselves. So they're gonna go on 4 missions. On these 4 missions, they have a little book of magical rhymes that Teddy and Kathleen gave them. They get 10 rhymes for all 4 missions. They have to use them really carefully because if they run out of the rhymes, then they won't have any left. And they have to be very careful with how they use them because they'll be in public and, you don't want to just kind of be doing magic out in public. So, they're going on these 4 missions. This is the first of our 4. So they're actually going back in time to Venice. And they're going to be solving a problem for Merlin. We don't know what the problem is yet because we haven't read it, but they will be going on this mission. Now, Teddy and Kathleen sent them on their journey, but they won't be with them because Jack and Annie kind of have to solve these on their own to kind of prove that they can do magic. So, let's go over our vocabulary that's written on this super nice piece of paper. Okay, first word was canal. A canal is basically those channels of water that run through the city of Venice, but you can have canals. There's like a lot of canals down in North Carolina, like on the Outer Banks and stuff. Gondola, which is basically a low flat boat that is used to often go on canals. Gondolier. A gondolier is somebody who drives a gondola, and by drives I mean they stand in the back of the pole and push it through the water. Gondolas don't have engines. Grouchy. Grouchy is like when you're grumpy and just irritated. It's kind of like a synonym for grumpy. Eerily would be a synonym for like spooky or creepy or kind of weird. Prong is like a tine of a fork. Like, so if here's my fork, my fingers are the tine. And then Venice is the actual city in Italy where you can, that Jack and Annie are going to. And like I said, you can go visit Venice today. It's a real city. People live there. But it's just been around for like a really long time. You can actually go look it up. I think last year maybe I took them on a virtual field trip. So we went there on the computer. I can't obviously take you to Venice because that would cost a lot of money. And also then you'd have to fly and it's complicated. Anyway, so we are, there's 9 chapters in this book. So we read 1 yesterday and then we're going to read 2 today, 2 tomorrow, 2 Thursday, 2 Friday. Okay. Chapter 2, Carnival. Annie laughed. Jack opened his eyes. He and Annie were wearing purple and pink outfits with huge ruffled collars. On their heads were funny-looking hats, and on their feet were big red slippers with big bows. "Who are we?" said Annie. "I dunno," said Jack. He didn't really feel like a wise, brave helper in red slippers. He just felt stupid. Together, Jack and Annie looked out of the treehouse window. They landed in a small tree inside a walled garden. The sky was gray, and Jack couldn't tell if it was morning or evening, but the air felt damp and kind of heavy, as if a storm was about to break. That's cool, because it's kind of what it's like outside today. "I guess this is Venice," he said. "Let's check out our book," said Annie. She opened the research book and read aloud. "Today, the city of Venice is one of the most popular tourist spots in the world. It lies in the lagoon of the Adriatic Sea. Instead of roads, Venice has waterways called canals. People glide along the canals in shallow boats called gondolas. A man called a gondolier stands in the back of the boat and uses the long oar to propel the gondola through the water." "That sounds like fun," said Jack. I should note, Venice does have streets, so it's not like their streets are replaced with water, which when I was a kid would have been like the coolest thing ever, because like I really thought that was awesome just by being terrified of water, but they actually do have streets as well as canals. "Yeah," said Annie, "let's go." "Wait," said Jack, "we don't know what our mission is yet." He took out Merlin's letter and unfolded it. He read, "Dear Jack and Annie of Frog Creek, your mission will require great patience and a little bit of magic. The Grand Lady of the Lagoon is in terrible danger. The only one who can help you save her from a disaster is the ruler of the seas. To locate him, follow these directions. When waters rise beneath the moon, visit the Grand Lady of the Lagoon. To find out where you need to go, seek out a painter named Tiepolo. At midnight 2 men will tell you the time. To the top of the tower hurry and climb. The king of the jungle will carry you there, not over land, but high in the air. An angel of gold will show you the way to the sea by night and home by day." Merlin. Jack pushed his glasses up. He said. "I wonder who the Grand Lady is," said Annie, "and why we need to save her." I'm wondering a lot of stuff, said Jack. What about the whole king of the jungle? We're in a city, not a jungle. And what about the angel? And let's just take one bit at a time, said Annie. What's first? Jack looked at the letter and read, When waters rise beneath the moon, visit the grand lady of the lagoon. All right, so let's just start by finding the grand lady, said Annie. She headed down the treehouse ladder. Jack put Merlin's letter in his backpack, along with the research book and the book of magic rhymes. Then he climbed down the ladder and caught up with Annie. As they walked over the path, the sky darkened. Good, thought Jack, it's night. He didn't want anyone to see him in his silly outfit, especially the bright red slippers with bows. Hey, this is the way out, said Annie. She led Jack to a wooden gate in the garden wall and pushed it open. Jack and Annie stepped through the gate into a quiet, empty walkway. Next to the walkway was a narrow lane of water. I guess it's a canal, said Jack. Must be a gondola, said Annie. She pointed to a long, curved black boat rounding the corner. In the last light of day, the gondola was gliding silently up the canal towards them. Yike, said Annie. There were two people in the back of the boat, a gondolier and a passenger. Each wore a black cloak, white gloves, and a ghostly white mask. The mask had a long, pointy nose, like the shape of a bird beak. The passenger sat in the middle of the boat, holding a lantern. The gondolier stood in the back, pushing a long oar through the water. They are a lot weirder looking than us, said Annie. No kidding, said Jack. Hello, the passenger shouted. The person's voice sounded muffled behind the mask. Do you need help? Yes, Annie shouted back. Can you take us to the grand lady of the lagoon? Yes, of course. She's back that way, answered the passenger. Come. So here you can see what they look like. So there's Jack and Annie's outfit. So you can see Jack's feeling a little silly because his outfit looks kind of insane. And then those are the people in the boats with bird masks. And there is a reason that they're wearing silly outfits. You'll find out. Great, said Annie. She grabbed Jack's hand and pulled him to the gondola. The gondola rocked a bit as she and Jack climbed aboard and took seats between the gondolier and the passenger. The gondolier pushed the gondola away from the landing. His oar made soft splashes as the boat moved up the canal. Jack cleared his throat. Excuse me, he said. Why are you wearing bird masks? For the carnival, of course, said the passenger. That's why you're wearing clown costumes, no? Yeah, sure, said Jack. As the gondola slid through the canal, Jack snuck the research book out of his backpack. Oh boy, a carnival, said Annie. I hope it has a roller coaster. I don't think they had roller coasters 260 years ago, said Jack. He looked up Carnival in the back and then flipped to the right page. He and Annie silently read, For many centuries, Carnival has been the most famous yearly festival in Venice. For Carnival, people dress themselves as anything they want to be. Rich, poor, male, female, young, old. All people are equal at Carnival. Hey, look, that's us, said Annie. She pointed to a picture of a colorful costume with a white ruffly collar and red slippers with bows. Oh, yeah, and that's them, said Jack. He pointed to a picture of a person wearing a black cloak and a white mask. Jack closed the book and put it away. The gondola people didn't seem so weird anymore, but he still wondered why a grand lady was in danger at the carnival, or at Carnival. As the boat glided around a bend, Jack caught his breath. He saw dozens of gondolas rocking on the choppy waters of a wide, open canal. They were all decorated with ribbons and flowers. Candlelight from lanterns danced on the dark, rippling water. Look, that must be Carnival over there, said Annie, pointing. In the distance, they could see thousands of candles twinkling along the shore. Sounds of laughter, clapping, and shouting floated over the water. Hold on tight, said the masked person. The tide is high tonight. As the gondola joined the fleet of boats heading towards Carnival, the wind picked up. The waves grew taller. Jack and Annie held on to the side of the boat. Jack could hear a faint rumble of faraway thunder. He saw a zigzag flash of lightning in the distance. Is a storm coming? He wondered nervously. Is the storm part of the disaster that's going to happen to the grand lady of the lagoon? This is going to be fun, isn't it? Said Annie cheerfully. Sure, said Jack. He tried to shake off his worries as the wind and tide helped push the gondola toward the twinkling candles of Carnival. What kind of costume would you wear if you were going to a big giant costume party? What would you want to dress up as? Carnival, by the way, is not Halloween. It's a different kind of a holiday. So it's not, people wear different kinds of outfits, but it's not like Halloween. They're not like dressing up for trick or treat or whatever. Chapter 3, The Grand Lady of the Lagoon. The gondola glided toward a landing at the edge of the canal. As the gondolier tied up the boat, water sloshed from the canal onto the wide walkway filled with carnival goers. The gondolier reached a gloved hand toward Annie and helped her out of the boat. He then held out a hand to Jack. When Jack grabbed it, he was surprised that the gondolier's hand felt small under the glove, almost like a kid's hand. As soon as Jack stepped out of the boat, the gondolier untied the rope and pushed off from the landing and began to row away. "Hey, bye, thanks," said Annie. The two strangers in the white bird masks just waved. Jack and Annie watched as the gondola disappeared over the choppy waters. Then they looked back at the shore. The Carnival crowd was parading up and down the walkway along the canal. "Hey, look," said Annie, "there's a bunch of people dressed like us, and two people like in our gondola." Jack saw a lot of black cloaks, bird masks, funny-looking hats, and ruffled collars. He also saw people dressed up as chickens, pirates, and knights. None of the costume people seemed to mind that the water spilling over the edge of the canal was soaking in their boots and slippers. As Jack and Annie stared at the crowd, a distant bell began to ring. The bell rang 9 times. "Guess that means it's 9 o'clock," said Jack. Just then another bell began to chime. Jack counted again. This time 10 chimes rang out. 10, Jack said, puzzled. "So what time is it? Is it 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock? Don't worry about that," said Annie. "I think I see the Grand Lady of the Lagoon." "Where?" said Jack. Annie pointed to a tall woman at the edge of the parade. She was wearing a black mask. She wore piles and piles of jewelry, a big white wig, and a wide hoop skirt. Jack and Annie moved towards the lady. "Excuse me," said Annie. "Hi." The lady looked at Annie. "Hello," she said in a deep man voice. "Whoa," said Jack, stepping back. Annie laughed. "You're a man?" she said. "Of course," said the man. "But for Carnival, I'm a very beautiful lady, no?" Well, we're looking for someone called the Grand Lady of," said Annie. But before she could finish, a giant chicken grabbed the man's hand and pulled him into the crowd. "Ooh, brother," said Jack. Lots of people were dressed like grand ladies when he looked around. How are we supposed to know which one to visit? "Maybe it's time to use one of the rhymes," said Annie. "We should just save the rhymes," said Jack. "Well, let's skip visiting the Grand Lady then," said Annie. "What's the next thing Merlin said to do?" Jack looked at the directions and read, "To find out where you need to go, seek out a painter named Tiepolo." "Oh, well, that's pretty clear," said Jack. "Let's see if Tiepolo's in the research book." As the noisy crowd celebrated around them, Jack pulled out the book. He stood near a lantern and looked in the index. "Oh, he's right here," said Jack. He turned to the page and read, "Tiepolo, say Tiepolo, was one of the greatest painters of Venice in the 1700s. He painted bright, beautiful oil paintings for palaces and villas." "If the guy's so famous, people definitely know where he lives," said Annie. "Hey, excuse me," she called to a clown walking by. "Can you tell us where the painter Tiepolo lives?" "Near the church of San Felice," the clown said. "Thanks," said Annie. "But you won't find him home," said the clown over his shoulder. "He's in Milan, painting." "Where's Milan?" shouted Jack. "A day's ride on horseback," said the clown. Then he disappeared. Said Annie. "Do you think Merlin wants us to go to Milan?" "We don't have time," said Jack. "I think we're just going to have to skip over the Tiepolo part too." "All right," said Annie. "Hey, maybe we should just skip all this stuff and just try to find the ruler of the seas on our own. Our letter says he's the only one that can save the Grand Lady." "I don't know," said Jack. "In his letter, Merlin tells us we have to be patient." But Annie was already calling to a pirate. "Sir, do you know where we can find the ruler of the seas?" "What?" shouted the pirate. "The ruler! Do you know where he lives?" said Annie. "In the palace on St. Mark's Square," said the pirate. "Where?" Annie called. But the pirate disappeared into the crowd. "I'll look up St. Mark's Square," said Jack. He flipped through the pages of the book until he came to a map of Venice. "Oh, cool," he said. Jack really loved maps. "Okay, here," said Jack. "We're here." And then he pointed to a walkway along the canal. "And if we want to go to St. Mark's Square, it's actually really close." "Yeah, and it looks like everyone is headed there," said Annie. "Come on." "So we go this way," said Jack, tracing his route with a finger. "Come on," Annie called. Jack looked up. She was already walking into the crowd. Soon they came to a huge, wide-open square. "Wow," said Jack. St. Mark's Square was filled with candlelight and musicians. Acrobats balanced on tight ropes. Boxers boxed in a ring. Knights fenced with swords. Clowns walked on tall stilts, raced wheelbarrows, and tried to catch live eels with their mouth. Ooh, sounds gross. All around the square were candlelit buildings. "Venice is beautiful," said Annie. "Yeah," said Jack, and he looked at the book. He found an illustration of St. Mark's Square. He read, "The watchtower of St. Mark's Square is the tallest building in Venice. The weather vane at the top," oh hey, we learned about that in science, once helped sailors by showing them which way the wind blew. Jack looked. I can barely see the weather vane, he said, squinting, but I think it's pointing north, so the wind's blowing from the south. Well, what about the ruler's palace? Where's that thing? Said Annie. Jack kept reading. The clock tower is one of the most beautiful towers in Venice. On the top of the tower, a bell is struck every hour by... Jack, skip to the whole palace thing, said Annie, please. All right, said Jack. He read. Oh, actually, I'm going to show you a full-page picture first. The Palace of Venice's ruler is one of the most splendid structures ever built. It has a great hall where as many as 2,000 nobles once met to discuss city matters. It also holds the city's grim prison cells. Above the palace door is a sculpture of St. Mark showing a book to a winged lion. Hey, there's the palace door, said Annie. Jack looked up. Annie was heading towards a huge door with the sculpture of a man and a winged lion above it. Jack closed the book and hurried to catch up with her. A guard was standing by the palace door. The guard wore a uniform and held a rifle. Wait, Jack whispered. Is he a real guard or is that a guard costume? I'll find out, said Annie. She walked over to the guard. Excuse me, sir, is the ruler of Venice in the palace right now? Begone, clown, the guard said gruffly. But it's really important, said Annie. We need to talk to him about something. I said begone, the guard growled. I am tired of clowns wasting my time. She's actually not a clown, said Jack. We're like here on a mission and we need to get both of you or else, roared the guard. Then he held up his rifle. Okay, he's definitely not wearing a costume, said Jack. Okay, sorry, said Jack. He and Annie moved away from the entrance. What a grouchy dude, said Annie. Well, he's never going to let us in, said Jack. Maybe it's time to use one of the rhymes. Maybe we should turn into ducks. The guards are not going to mind if a couple... No, said Jack. We have got to save our rhymes. You can tell Annie really wants to turn into a duck, can't you? Well, how are we supposed to get inside then, said Annie. Just have patience, said Jack. Remember. But before he could finish, Annie broke in. Hey, look! 2 clowns on stilts were dancing around the guard. One grabbed the guard's rifle and tossed it to the other. Hey, yelled the guard, give that back. Now's our chance, said Annie. Quick! She ran to the entrance and slipped through the door. Oh, no. Man, said Jack. Well, the guard chased after the 2 clowns on stilts. Jack rushed to the doorway of the palace and slipped inside, too. Chapter 4. Rats! And that's where we're going to stop for today. So, part of this mission is for them to have patience. And obviously, Annie doesn't really possess that ability to be patient. So do you think you'd be more like Jack in this story, or are you more like Annie, just like, let's go, let's figure it out? And then, like I said, what kind of costume, what would you want to dress up as if you got to go to Carnival? What would you want to be? And we will continue tomorrow with Chapter 4. Toodaloo!